The Unhappy Hour on the new AmericanMedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles, to be specific. Sorry, that was a little hard. Anyway, welcome to the show. My name's Brian Engelman. Yep, I have a last name too. Here at the new AmericanMedia.com and the TNAM radio network. This show is called The Unhappy Hour. It's where Indians, Cavs, Browns, and Buckeye fans get together and we talk sports. Of course, in Cleveland, we haven't celebrated a championship in the 36 years that I've been alive. So, hence the title, The Unhappy Hour. But it's a very happy time of year because fantasy football is starting. And that's why I want to bring in Mike Murray to the program. Football is starting, and you know what that means? Fantasy football is starting. And I love this time of year. Might be the first time I've had music and a phone ringing.
Hello.
Mike Murray, hello, sir. Welcome to the program. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, sir. Long time no talk. Good to hear from you.
No, man. I heard you won the Pumpkin Trophy. What is that? How many years is that on?
Me and Clint started that last year. I'm officially 2-0, so Clint's really got to get his what together for next year.
Yeah, well, he's a Steeler fan, and they've had the Browns number for how many years? So, whatever. It's nice to be on the other side of a streak this time. Take that, Clint. For those of you that don't know, Murray has been on, I believe this is our 17th annual fantasy football program that we've done. 17 years, right, Mike?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, 17 years. Why not? Since before YouTube,
yeah.
Way back around MySpace days. I don't know. Or Bill Clinton was in charge. Anyhow, but Clint and Mike and I have all been in each other's weddings and good friends since back in our days at Bowling Green State University, where Urban Meyer used to coach. But anyway, man, I bring you in this time of year for a couple of reasons, and all those reasons involve picking your brain. We call you the fantasy football guru. Because you are. And how many leagues are you in this year?
I'm going to go with 6 this year.
Yeah, you didn't join the Unhappy Hour fantasy football group. You didn't jump into that league. I guess you're full, but I have you on the unofficial waiting list in case you weren't aware.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, sweet deal. It's going to be fun. We're having 2 divisions of 12 teams, and that's one of the things we got to talk about is the difference between a 10-man league and a 12-man league. At what point are the drop-offs when you need to consider which positions? I definitely want to talk about that, talk about the difference between PPR and standard, who some of the rookies we think are going to be that are going to come through and have big seasons, as well as who are ballers turned to fallers. Who's going to, we can think of Ray Rice or, hell, Adrian Peterson last year. I mean, a suspension's a little different, but at what point are Marshawn Lynch and Matt Forte and some of these older running backs going to break down and not give you the value that you think you're going to get out of them? But before we even get into that, I want to kind of get into this. I was thinking we could play a game right now. Okay. And I figure if I wait too long on this, I'm not going to bring up this topic in our conversation. I feel like we're going to run out of time. So here's what I want to do, Mike. I want to take some of the best players, and I'm going to kind of go through at least one of these football cheat sheets, and we can discuss how to use the cheat sheets best as well. But I want to name off a name, and I want something where you're going to give me a one-sentence answer of how you think they're going to do this year and why. So if I say Aaron Rodgers.
Should have a great year because he's an absolute stud.
Andrew Luck.
He has all the weapons around him. He's got Andre Johnson now. Frank Gore should have a good year, and they also might go to the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Oh, Russell Wilson.
He's as solid as they come. You're going to get those rushing yards as well as, maybe not as many passing yards as Rodgers or Luck, but overall, definitely a top 5 quarterback.
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning, he's definitely getting older. Maybe injury concerns could be a possibility as time goes on. He lost Julius Thomas, Wes Welker, so should have a good season, but I'd put a couple question marks there.
Drew Brees.
Drew Brees is consistent as any quarterback in the league. Pretty obvious that Jimmy Graham is no longer there, and that was by far their best player. So should have a good year, but same thing with Manning, a couple question marks there.
Okay, I'm going to go for the first 5, at least in this particular Standard League cheat sheet that I'm looking at. And we'll get back to this later if we have time, because I definitely want to get into the strategy component. But let's go to tight ends. Rob Gronkowski.
Rob Gronkowski is in the league all on his own as far as tight ends. There's your top tier tight ends, and you go to your second tier. Pretty much the only top tier tight end is Rob Gronkowski. He's an absolute stud. The only good question mark there would be, sounds like Brady's out potentially for the first 4 games, so maybe a little drop off in the first 4 games, but otherwise he's an absolute stud.
Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham, Seattle ran the ball, I think, more than any other team last year. So he's certainly getting into a different offense. The weather out there isn't as great. He used to play in a dome in New Orleans, so, it should have a very good season. He'll get the work, but I wouldn't expect the type of year he's been doing in the past few years.
Let me start Greg Olsen off with the fact that they lost a huge wide receiver weapon over where you're at in Carolina. What kind of year is he going to have with Olsen?
Greg Olsen, I love him a lot this year, specifically in the PPR league. So PPR is point per reception. He's going to get a lot of work. You're probably looking at maybe 8 or 9 touchdowns, but the reception total I think should be pretty high, if not better than last year.
Travis Kelce.
Travis Kelce, kind of the same deal as Olsen. Really good in PPR. Alex Smith, kind of a dink and dunk type passer throughout his career. Kelce was a rookie, I believe, last year, and really came out in the PPR format. So, he's definitely worth the top 5 tight end ranking.
Martellus Bennett.
Bennett, I mean, there's always questions with Jay Cutler as far as accuracy, but they did lose Brandon Marshall to the Jets. So, again, I sort of like him a little bit more in PPR leagues, maybe 6 or 7 touchdowns max, probably.
Yeah, and there's some other interesting names here with Zach Ertz having an injury and Jordan Cameron going to a new team, but we'll get to that later. Running backs, Le'Veon Bell.
Well, Le'Veon Bell, you've got, I think it went from a 3 to a 2-game suspension. I've heard a lot of the ESPN analysts say that they still rank him, even though he's suspended, as the number 1 overall player. I would, definitely more in a PPR league again. I think he caught, 50 or 60 passes, maybe more than that last year. So he's still a young running back in an offense that's going to feature him a lot. So should have a stud year as long as you're okay with being out the first couple of games.
Where do you think he's going to go? Do you think he's going to go 1? Do you think he's going to go top 5? I mean, missing 3 entire games is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, like I said, I think that was reduced from 3 to 2.
Okay,
so
2.
It's really just can you get past that and waste your number 1 or 2 pick on him? But there's really no reason he shouldn't go any lower than, let's just say, 6 or 7 overall.
Yeah, that's just harsh because, I mean, you don't want to start your fantasy football league off 0-2, or, if you got Gronkowski or somebody, or, you're going to go ahead and get Tom Brady for some reason, and then, you're 0-3 or 1-3 or 0-4, and that's a tough hole to dig out of, and that's what a lot of these a lot of the owners are going to have to figure out this year. Is it worth risking that versus, let's talk about Adrian Peterson after a year off last year?
Adrian Peterson, he's fresh and ready to go. They've added some weapons on offense. I think they brought in Mike Wallace from Miami. Teddy Bridgewater in his second year. He did a lot better in the second half of the year last season. I think Peterson's fresh and ready to go. He's arguably potentially the number 1 overall pick, if not top 3 or 4 for sure.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell and this next running back, Eddie Lacy. Maybe I just had him a year ahead of their time. I'm in a couple leagues, and one's a 10-man, one's a 12-man, and this, that, and the other. And I'll tell you what, it was rough because what they were projected to do, they just didn't come through. They were never the consistent workhorses that I needed. By the time they got their act together, the season was over, and so was my fantasy football chances of the playoffs. And we're up here with Eddie Lacy, another year older. What do we expect out of him this year?
Eddie Lacy is, I think as we all know, is an absolute beast. I mean, he'll truck guys over left and right, sort of, a la Marshawn Lynch. Green Bay definitely featured him more in the passing game last year. Green Bay probably one of the better screen teams in the league, and if he gets trucking behind a couple linemen, watch out. So I would definitely expect Eddie Lacy to go no later than maybe the top 6 or 7 picks.
Jamal Charles, another year older.
Jamal Charles, last year they started to work in Niall Davis a little bit more. I think Jamal Charles had I don't know the stat, but it was so many games under, I don't even know what it was, 10 or 15 carries. So it almost seems like, he's going to have to get the work, and I'm not sure it's going to be there. So I had a couple question marks about him, but overall he's still a top 10 player for sure.
Marshawn Lynch.
Marshawn Lynch is probably one of the more consistent running backs in the top 5. He's going to get you those 12 to 1,500 yards rushing and probably easily over 10 touchdowns. As far as receptions, maybe 20 or 30, but he's a pretty safe pick. I don't know if I'd go number 1 or 2 or 3 with him, but I'd say in the 4 to maybe 8 range for Lynch.
And there's definitely some more running backs, DeMarco Murray, LaShawn McCoy, Matt Forte, C.J. Anderson I want to get into. But before I go any further over here, maybe looking at wide receivers and defense and kicker, are you using Twitter yet? Are you going to be a presence kind of giving out tips and tricks or anywhere this year where you're kind of pondering things out loud as the season progresses? Is there any site that I should give people out where they can stay in touch with you or follow what you're doing, Mike?
I'm currently not on Twitter. I've unfortunately I've been taking some more responsibility at my job, so currently I am not available on Twitter. But I will certainly keep you updated if that changes.
Well, it's interesting because what that does is that makes this podcast, this radio show, this program so much more important because they're literally not going to get it anywhere else. What we can do is that we can send it out on Twitter. I didn't mention our Twitter handles at American_media_. On Facebook, do a search for The New American Media and like the page. You can also search for our sports group. It's called The Unhappy Hour Sports Show. Search for that group and ask to join, and subscribe, youtube.com/The New American Media, and our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. So we'll have this interview uploaded over there, and let's talk about wide receivers. Antonio Brown, some people have him going in the top 5. It's a little surprising because, I don't know. Of course, there's always a wide receiver or two. In the past few years, it's been Andre Johnson, or you've seen Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones, AJ Green. But now you see Antonio Brown here. Some people have him listed as the number 1 receiver, maybe top 5 pick. Do you have him ranked that high?
Specifically in a PPR league, he's arguably, anywhere from, I've seen him in mock drafts go as high as number 3 or so overall, but pretty much after the top shelf of running backs, maybe Le'Veon Bell down to, let's just say, Marshawn Lynch. Then you get into the Antonio Brown type player where he's just getting the work. I mean, he's getting the targets. He's going to get you anywhere from 6 to, who knows, maybe 12 or 13 catches a game. It's clearly Big Ben's favorite target. Now, a lot of people are going to pick him that high based on last year when he just absolutely blew it up, but I mean, there's really no reason he shouldn't get close to or not over 100 catches. So I absolutely love the guy in the PPR league. He's definitely top 10 overall, I think, in any format. So
Demaryius Thomas came back.
Yeah, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas and Wes Welker gone. Demaryius Thomas, he really should be the guy. He's arguably, potentially the number 1 overall wide receiver in a standard league. Like I said, I like Brown a little bit better in a PPR, but Thomas is definitely top 2 or 3 wide receivers easy.
Des Bryant.
Des Bryant's an absolute machine. Easy 10 touchdowns a year with the potential of getting up to 15 touchdowns. Same thing with Antonio Brown. Des Bryant is Tony Romo's favorite target. He's going to just feed him the ball, and the guy's an absolute monster in the end zone. So, again, arguably the best wide receiver in a standard format.
Madden cover boy Odell Beckham Jr.
Well, Odell Beckham, we all saw what he did last year as soon as he became the starting wide receiver. Easy 8 or 9 catches a game, Manning just feeding him the ball. Now, they've got Victor Cruz back this year, and, again, it's Eli Manning throwing him the ball. So the consistency factor of how good Manning will do, is a question mark. But the defenses in that division, those 4 teams, are not very good. So, I like Odell Beckham Jr. a lot, again, more in a PPR, but there are some question marks. I think that people are maybe potentially overvaluing him a little bit maybe reaching for him in the top 6 or 7 picks, which is, to me is a little crazy, but he still should have a very good year.
Jordy Nelson.
Well, you know how I feel about Jordy Nelson.
He helped me. He helped me before on my teams, man. I liked having him on there.
Yeah, Jordy Nelson. He's maybe the best overall wide receiver, potentially, arguably in the NFL. He's got the speed. He runs phenomenal routes. Rodgers that's his number one guy. And when you've got Rodgers, what is it? Two MVPs now, I think. Close to 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, or whatever it was last year. He's, again, arguably maybe the best wide receiver, if not in the top 2 or 3.
All right, let's bounce over to team defense. Seattle Seahawks.
Well, again, Seattle, the Seahawks probably is still the best defense in the NFL. Again, it's a question of, I've seen people reach up in the 4th or 5th round and take them just to have, what some people think is the best defense. But I believe last year they had a pretty horrendous first half of the year. So then you've wasted a pick where maybe you could have grabbed like an Emmanuel Sanders or like a Lamar Miller, and you grabbed a defense. So I like the Seahawks, but maybe I'd definitely temper your expectations as far as trying to grab one in an early round.
Buffalo Bills. The Cleveland Browns just played them yesterday, and that front line on the defense is tough, man.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills, they have a ton of talent, especially in their front four. I think they added some depth in the back end there, and Rex Ryan's an aggressive coach. He's gonna push hard, a lot of blitzes probably. So they should be a pretty good unit. Definitely top 3 as far as overall defenses. But again, I can't stress enough, just temper your expectations. You can end up grabbing the Carolina defense or some other defense in round 15 or 16, and they could have a good year. So as far as the difference at the end of the year and how many points they scored, it could be marginal. So just keep those expectations, strong in. So.
That is good advice, because a lot of times in these drafts, which is why I recommend you do mock drafts as well, so you can kind of get a feel for it. So you just have a feel for the rhythm and the tempo and the timing and your system, so that you're not overwhelmed and make mistakes, because a lot of times there'll be a run on defenses or there'll be a run on kickers, and then it's like people just grab the next available one, as opposed to, like you said, you could have a flex running back sitting right there, and you jumped ahead way too far and stretched for a defense when like you said, over the course of a season, the defense isn't necessarily going to win you a championship. It's not going to make it to get you to the playoffs with that many difference of points, and that sometimes there are sleeper teams that you can just pick up on the waiver wire. I hear you on that. I completely hear you on that. Houston Texans, J.J. Watt, absolute stud. What should we expect this year from him?
The Texans, again, I'm not sold. It really feels like in the last year or two, they've got J.J. Watt, they've got Clowney, who's got potential, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. Kind of a question mark there. That's a defense I'm not sure. And we're looking at the ESPN cheat sheet here, so they've got him 4th overall. If I'm at that point, I'm almost just going to wait on a defense a little bit more. Other than Watt, just that offense they have, it could be maybe not the greatest this year, so the defense might be on the field a little bit more than expected. So, I'm not a massive fan of the Texans defense.
Yeah, that would be one that is, in your opinion, pretty overvalued. You would go many other directions before you jumped or stretched for that one. What about the St. Louis Rams, possibly soon to be the Los Angeles Rams?
Well, the Rams are, they have a nasty pass rush. They've got Long and Quinn on the edge there. Got some good young cornerbacks. They added, I forget his name, but yeah, when they're in the dome, they're definitely a defense I want to start. Get them outside the dome in some different conditions. Just really play the matchup, but pretty good overall. You'll get some stacks and picks with those guys, but probably the best point I can really give you on this show as far as defenses and kickers and what have you, just from a real high level, is if there are some guys there at wide receiver, running back, that you could, if there's some guys in tier 2 or 3 as far as the running backs that are left, grab those guys first before you start looking at a defense. Make sure that you're filling your bench up with a lot of really good running back and wide receiver depth before you're going to reach for a top 8 or 9 defense or what have you. So those guys are going to, in the long run, be way more important than a defense. The points from the top defense to the number 8 defense at the end of the year, it's probably not going to be that much different.
That is a good point, and that you remind me of another question that I want to get into is the tiers. Like at what level do we have elite players, and then where's the drop off? And then so like tier 1 is how many people, tier 2 is how many, and then where does it just go? Oh Lord, avoid that. And I want to get to that in a second. I just want to wrap up a couple of these, and I'll tell you what. I'll start with that question when I veer over. Then New York Jets, number 5 team defense on the standard ESPN 2015 Fantasy Football Draft Kit cheat sheet.
New York Jets, again, in my opinion, just like the Texans, you're going to, in my opinion, have some struggles on offense there.
Yeah.
Rex Ryan's gone. They brought in Todd Bowles, so it's going to be a bit of a struggle. They bring back Revis and Cromartie, I think. So, you're solid at cornerback there, but got some talent on the Jets defense. Just a matter of how good can their offense do to help them out.
Yeah, very good point with that. When I played high school football at the high school you went to, Mike. Some years we had lights out offense, and some years it was a little bit more of a challenge to put points on the board, and it does. It makes a difference whether you can, hold them to a 3 and out and then get off the field and rest for 20 minutes versus, you're on there for a few plays and you go off. The offense stalls after a few plays and you get the ball right back and you're like, crap. You give it right back to them and you're just back out there. And over time, that can wear a team down to the point where even if they're very good, they're getting overworked. That is definitely something to consider with the New York Jets. Let's move to kickers. Steven Gostkowski.
Gostkowski, he's probably consistently probably the best overall kicker, and he plays in a pretty high-volume offense. He's really good at the long-range field goals, too. You get a lot of extra points with him, so probably consistently the number 1 overall kicker for several years now. So he's solid, but I'm not taking a kicker until the very last round, though. You're looking at marginal point difference between him and, let's just say, Hauschka or Dan Bailey from the Cowboys. So, I'm waiting until the very last round for a kicker.
Okay, well then let's just skip over kickers and say whoever the best available is, or just roll the dice based on the cheat sheet. That's fair. Then let's get to the tiers. Tier 1 quarterbacks, where is the drop-off? Who is on Tier 1 QB? So if you're looking at doing tiers, so it's really, it's everyone's opinion, but I'm looking at this cheat sheet here. So really, Tier 1 to me is Rodgers and Luck. That's your Tier 1, and then you drop down to Tier 2. Which is who? Who do we put in Tier 2?
Tier 2, so, I got, let's say, Breeze, Wilson, Manning, Romo, and probably Roethlisberger, and then I'm probably drop to Tier 3 there.
All right, then who's in 3? We'll go top 3 tiers because it's important to see. It's like if you're at, say, the last quarterback in Tier 2, Breeze is gone, Wilson's gone, Manning, Romo's gone. You go, should I take Roethlisberger? I'll just get a quarterback later. And you go, no. The drop-off from Roethlisberger to the next one, you don't want, there's actually a difference between those. If you can grab somebody from that group, cool. If not, get another flex player that you can use in another position or something. So I guess Tier 3, how does this round out? Matt Ryan, is Newton in there?
So I would say Tier 3, Newton, Ryan, Tannehill, Brady, Eli Manning, Rivers, and that's probably it. After that, actually, they've got Matthew Stafford down here at 16. I think that he's pretty undervalued. I really do like him this year.
Yeah, he's done well for me. I think he was my quarterback when I won the championship. That was, I could agree with that. Okay.
Yep. So I'll say we'll cut it off at Stafford, and then the rest of those guys, at that point, you're looking at the really late rounds if I would even consider them. Typically, I like to have obviously a starting quarterback and then a different quarterback, maybe from that Tier 2 or 3 group that has a different bye week. Really no reason to have 3 quarterbacks on your bench. You just want to stack your bench with running backs and wide receivers.
Yeah, I like to get 2 quarterbacks so I can make it through the bye week, and then if somebody gets injured somewhere else, I like to kind of pull the trigger and make a trade for somebody. I like to trade for an RB2 maybe for a quarterback, and that's kind of how I do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When Breeze has an off year, for example. Anyway, I digress. Okay, like you said, tight ends. Tier 1, is Graham in Tier 1 or no?
When Graham was with New Orleans, he was in Tier 1, and he was arguably in a PPR league. You could argue that him or Gronk were number 1, but he's really Tier 1 all by himself now. And then Tier 2 tight ends, Jimmy Graham, Kelsey, Olsen. That's probably it for Tier 2. Tier 3. Martellus Bennett, Deckers, Witten, maybe Julius Thomas, and that's really about it. You really start getting into some dicey guys here. Tight ends is kind of a crapshoot. I mean, you can really wait. Basically, Brian, if you're not going to draft Gronk, or if you really like Jimmy Graham, you can probably wait on a tight end. I mean, if you're not going to grab one of those tier 2 guys, or maybe even like a Greg Olsen, I would wait till 10th, 11th, 12th round to grab a tight end.
Okay, fair enough. Running backs.
Running backs, Tier 1, Bell, Peterson, Charles, Lacey, and Lynch.
Bell, Peterson, Charles, Lacey, and Lynch?
Yeah.
Okay, so then after that, where's Tier 2?
Tier 2, Forte, C.J. Anderson, Jeremy Hill, LaShawn McCoy, and probably DeMarco Murray. That's probably Tier 2.
And Tier 3?
Tier 3, Forsett, Lamar Miller, Frank Gore. I like Melvin Gordon a lot in San Diego. I think he's probably going to get the most of the work there. That's probably about it. Then you kind of gets kind of dicey. You got a lot of guys you're sort of unfamiliar with, who are starting with new teams. Some rookies in there, so that's probably about it for Tier 3.
What about Frank Gore's year in Indianapolis?
Frank Gore's a little bit older. I'm not completely sure on who the backup is there.
Yeah, because you have him in the Tier 3.
Yeah.
I just if that offense is just going to be rocking and rolling, is it possible he could be in the second tier somewhere, that he could have a big year? Who knows? That's the beauty of this. You draft your team, and the not beauty of the game of football, of course, is injuries. But the beauty of fantasy football is you just don't know who's going to get hurt. If someone on the defense gets hurt, it impacts the offense, and there's this whole set of circumstances that clicks into play, and it's really out of the control of the fantasy team owner at a certain point, and that kind of makes it fun and completely unpredictable. It's just that wild card floating around how many people had Adrian Peterson last year?
I did. I think it was my number 1 first-round pick.
Ray Rice. How often does it happen? It happens. Josh Gordon. Or you draft him so you can have him for half a season, but then he comes back not as great as he was before. So, is Adrian Peterson going to be sharp after a year off? Is he going to be rusty? Who knows? And I just think this is one of the most fantastic games. You and I, Mike, used to play Texas Hold'em, and I still think that's pound for pound one of the best games in the history of games. It's skill, it's luck, it's playing the person, it's so many different things. It's just a wonderful game of chance. But yeah, this fantasy football league, it's so much fun trying to figure out who's going to be who, and then of course the waiver wire pickups. That's so clutch. If someone goes down, who do you pick up? Who's trending in the right direction? Who got injured? So now it's next man up, and they're going to get more targets. There's so much to take into consideration on this. Were you interested again this year in maybe doing some shows throughout the season to kind of like update and recap, if not on a week by week, but I don't even know.
You can certainly hit me up from time to time. If I'm available, for sure.
All right, I think we always talk about that, but your schedule's crazy, so is ours. But yeah, let's try to make that happen, because week to week, man, this league changes. So let's get to the receivers as well. Top tier: Antonio Brown, Julius Thomas.
Tier 1, now wide receiver this year is unbelievably deep. It's crazy how you can get into the 40s and 50s overall as wide receivers, and still some guys I'd be happy with. So Tier 1, oh boy, there's quite a few of them. Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Marius Thomas, Odell Beckham, Des Bryant, Calvin Johnson, Jordy Nelson, maybe A.J. Green. That's probably Tier 1 right there.
Then into
Tier
2.
Yeah, Tier 2, Randall Cobb, Alshon Jeffrey. I like Mike Evans a lot. Again, you're kind of a crapshoot as far as Jameis Winston, how good of a year he has.
Right.
T.Y. Hilton, that's going to be a high-powered offense this year. I like him a lot. I like Emmanuel Sanders, again, just based off the work, really more in a PPR league. DeAndre Hopkins I like a lot now that Andre Johnson has gone there in Houston. That's probably it for Tier 2. And honestly, there's so many Tier 3 guys. I'll try to name a few here. I like Brandon Cooks there in New Orleans. I like him, kind of like Andre Johnson this year in Indianapolis. I'm not sure why he's kind of getting the boot there. I know they have T.Y. Hilton, but Andre Johnson's still Andre Johnson, and he's got Andrew Luck on the ball. So
Yeah.
I think he started being undervalued. I really like Allen Robinson over there in Jacksonville. Really, again, in a PPR league. I know I keep saying that, but Golden Tate, again, in a PPR league. And then kind of like, again, if we're into Tier 3, you got to have Brandon Marshall in there. I know he's maybe not in the greatest offense, but, I'd be happy if Brandon Marshall is my number 3 wide receiver.
He might be in the worst offense.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty, but it's crazy enough. I actually like the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick's the quarterback over Geno Smith, so I might give Brandon Marshall a slight upgrade with that situation.
All right. And does that kind of round out 3, or we got a few more in there?
That kind of rounds it out. Again, it's such a deep position this year. Guy I like a lot there. You could even argue Tier 3 or 4, but got a ton of upside is Devontae Adams in Green Bay. He should be their number 3 receiver. If Cobb or Nelson went down, he'd instantly be a top 10 or 15 receiver. There's just a lot of depth there at wide receiver. So that's probably about as far as we could go.
Can we go down to Tier 4 in the wide receiver? Because there's, like you said, there's so damn many of them.
Sure. Let's see here. I like Jarvis Landry in Miami. Again, in a PPR. Jordan Matthews over in Philadelphia. Again, I'm not sure about the quarterback situation there. I know they have Sam Bradford, I believe, as the starter. Not completely sure he'll be able to produce the numbers Nick Foles did there in that offense, but Matthews should be their number 1 receiver. Sammy Watkins, just because there's so much talent there. I don't like their quarterbacks in Buffalo, but just a lot of talent. Was it Amari Cooper in Oakland? Again, Derek Carr, it seemed like he had a pretty good year last year. Amari Cooper had a great college career, so a lot of upside there. And then you get into the Victor Cruzes, the Roddy Whites, Larry Fitzgerald, guys like that who are kind of been around for a while now. At this point, it's unsure whether or not you'd want them on your bench or as your number 3 or flex. So that kind of rounds up at Tier 4.
Okay, then let's do this. We'll move real fast here. Rookies with I'll get to rookies with the biggest upside in a second. What is the difference in the strategy that people should take in the difference between a 10-person league and a 12-person league? Because doesn't it change a little bit when it's the value of a running back, because there's only so many decent ones and there's only so many positions, and now there's 2 extra teams instead of 2 less teams, stuff like that.
Yeah, obviously in a 10-team league, the teams are going to be a little bit more stacked. So, you might, again, it's really up to the individual how you're ranking your tiers as far as positions. But, you might say, well, I don't think I'm going to actually get down to this tier, but I really like this guy down here, so maybe I'll bump him up to Tier 2 or 3. I would think that's probably the primary difference as far as any sort of strategy in a 10 or 12.
Meaning in a 12-person league, you might stretch a little bit knowing that bottom end, by the time you get there, they're going to be garbage anyway. So reach on a couple of players and move up. Maybe that's where a defense might go a little higher, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's almost like when you're looking at your cheat sheet, you've kind of got to shrink your expectations a little bit. I think ESPN here, they list 90 receivers. So in a 12-team league, you might actually, kind of get in a few of those guys between 60 and 90, or just depending on who you like. But 10-team league, you just kind of shrink your expectations a little bit, and maybe throw a couple of those guys that you think have a lot of upside up into maybe your tier 3 or tier 4.
Gotcha. The sleepers this year.
Sleepers.
I mean, everybody likes to say sleeper, but I mean, who do you think is just going to bust out and be a huge value at where you get them? Maybe that's an easier way to say it with more words.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll just do one or two by position. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Let's see. Quarterback. As far as a sleeper, again, I was talking about Matt Stafford earlier. I think 2 or 3 years ago he blew it up. The guy's got a ton of talent around him. It's just a matter of can he consistently do it every year. Kind of Calvin Johnson's healthy. They've got some pretty good running back depth. I know they've upgraded their offensive line. I'm just waiting on their rookie tight end from last year, Eric Ebron, to break out. So if I had to pick a sleeper who you can get pretty late, Stafford's probably pretty good.
Yeah, I've had Stafford both. I think maybe all three. I just always end up with Stafford. He puts the numbers up. And he has a lot of turnovers and this and that. But it comes down to it. He's not a bad option any week ever.
Mm-hmm. And I like Carson Palmer a lot, actually.
Wow.
I know he had that injury last year, but if you go back and look at his stats week in and week out up to that injury, I think he was having without looking at the stats, maybe a top 5 or 6 quarterback year up into that injury. So he's got a lot of talent around him. That offense, they can pump out some points too. So again, I'm looking at the sleeper value, but also the overall value of where you can get these guys. So those would be my 2 quarterback picks.
Tight end?
Yeah, let's see. Tight end, as far as sleeper.
I mean, Owen Daniels, he's the new tight end in that system.
Well, there's a few guys here. I'll kind of go through them quickly. Richard Rodgers down at number 28 of Green Bay. So, he's their starting tight end. I understand he's not a household name, and he's not going to put up numbers like Gronk or Jimmy Graham, but I mean, he's the starting tight end in the Green Bay offense with Aaron Rodgers. So, with 50 receptions for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns, if you got him in the 15th or 16th round, I mean, I'd be totally happy with that. Yeah, I like Owen Daniels a lot. I mean, he should be a starter there. Maybe he doesn't put up Julius Thomas numbers, but good value. And then Eric Ebron, and he's a top 10 pick last year in the NFL draft. He's in a high-powered offense. If he can break out, I mean, he could be a top 5 tight end. So there's a few guys there that a lot of upside you can get pretty late.
Gotcha. Running back. You see some of these Giovanni Bernard, or you have Isaiah Crowell or Duke Johnson or Terrence West with the Browns. There's a lot of teams where the position isn't quite in stone. Who do you see at running back that you might expect to kind of burst through and kind of take control of the position and have a really good year despite not having a household name?
Well, I'll start off with a really big sleeper that, might even go undrafted in a lot of leagues. Looking at ESPN's PPR running back list, number 71, Cameron Artis-Payne for the Carolina Panthers. He set all kinds of records. I want to say he's played at Auburn University. He should be the backup of Jonathan Stewart. I think, as we all know, Jonathan Stewart has been plagued with injuries throughout his career. So if Stewart for some reason goes down, we like to run the ball here in Carolina. So I think that he could be a big steal. And then another guy that maybe could break out and have a good year. One of the Atlanta running backs between Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, the rookie. One of those guys has to run the ball. I think they've upgraded their offensive line.
Which 2 guys are we on? Which 2?
I have Devontae Freeman for Atlanta, and then Tevin Coleman from Atlanta. One of those guys has got to break out. So I might take a flyer on one of those.
Yeah, those late rounds, you just throw them on your bench, and it's like you have a 50-50 shot that they might become the guy if a guy emerges from the two-headed running back monster. I know last year the Cleveland Browns had Terrence West and Isaiah Crowell, feed the crow. They both put up about 700 yards, and Crow had a bunch of touchdowns. I've got my eye on him, but this Duke Johnson, I know he hasn't played in the preseason games, but everything that people have said about him coming out of Miami is just incredible. So, yeah, I mean, that's a really good point at that position. What about wide receiver?
Wide receiver, I think we all know Kelvin Benjamin's out for the year now for my hometown Carolina Panthers. Devin Funchess, rookie out of Michigan, 6'4", I believe. Pretty successful college career. Cam Newton likes those tall receivers. So I see Devin Funchess. Again, he's probably going to move up people's draft boards, obviously, now with Benjamin out, but I think you still get him in, I don't even know, maybe the 7th to 12th round. So, like the value there a lot. And then Nelson Aguilar, rookie wide receiver from USC, plays for the Eagles. Again, a really big target for Sam Bradford, opposite Jordan Matthews there in Philadelphia. I think he's had a couple decent preseason games so far. So those would be my two sleepers at wide receiver.
Okay. Well, I mean, that kind of rounds it out here. We're pretty much up against the end of the show. And is there any other general advice that you want to give people? Because, some people have played in a few leagues. Some people have never played in, well, I mean, I started in one, then I'm in 1.5. Now I'm in 2.5, and a co-commissioner in one. So, I mean, as the involvement grows, Mike, now you're at 6 leagues, I believe you said, and you're a commissioner, and I don't know, at least one that you and I are both in. Give me some advice as someone who's taken on a little bit more here. How do you keep organized, and what are some pitfalls to avoid when you start taking a few more teams?
Well, if you're getting into multiple leagues, 5, 6, it comes down to do you want to go into each draft with the same strategy and potentially end up with the same team almost? Obviously it's not a guarantee that would happen, but if something like that were to happen where most of your teams were similar and a lot of similar players, it's pretty obvious. Either you're going to win most of your leagues or you're going to lose most of your leagues. So, try to sort of vary it up a little bit. Go for some different combinations. Maybe one league, go running back and wide receiver heavy. Grab yourself like a who knows, like a Tom Brady late or Cam Newton late for your quarterback. Just try to switch it up. And even though I was sort of saying to wait on defenses and kickers earlier, keep in mind that most leagues you do start a defense and a kicker. So, make sure you don't completely not value those positions. I mean, you'd like to get a decent one. I mean, they do put up some points and they could win games for you. So you definitely don't want to reach on those, but you also don't necessarily need to wait to the very end. It just really depends on who's left, the value you put on some of these players. But definitely make sure that you're comfortable going into week one with your defense and your kicker.
And then final question here. How about some draft position strategies? Because it's way different if you get the number 1 pick and you go, oh man, I get the first cool, and then you go, oh crap, I gotta nail this. What if I screw this up? This is because you don't draft again until number 20 or 24 or something like that if you're in a 12-person league. What different strategies should people take if they're at different positions? So say you're pick number 1, 2, or 3. What should you be thinking as a mentality there in general? If that's even a question you can answer.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if you've got a top 3 pick, unless you're completely sold on, an Aaron Rodgers or an Antonio Brown or a Gronk, I mean, you should be going running back. I mean, running backs, it's the core. It's going to be the core of your team. That's where you're going to get the primary points every week. Again, in a PPR league, might be a little bit different with 1 or 2 of those wide receivers, but got to hit up running backs if you're in a top 3 position. And then secondly, look at where you're going to pick next. So if you've got the number 1 pick, I think you picked, 25th and 26th, but you're going to have 2 in a row there. So maybe do some mock drafts on Yahoo or ESPN, kind of see who's left around there and kind of get a comfort level of, who should be left there. Make sure you're prepared that a few different guys They could go before, maybe when they would go in your mock draft, they might actually go further up in your real draft. So just kind of be prepared and know who could be left in that area when you come back around.
Okay, I kind of lied right there, like Bill Belichick telling Jim McMahon in 1995 that, I don't know if you saw the story or not, but he lied to his face, so he's calling him not a far stretch to be a cheater. But anyway, I lied about the last question. Okay, so for people that haven't done this, then we will wrap it with this. What are some great places? I mean, would you just say go to ESPN.com to do mock drafts? How many should they do? Should they go the whole? How long does it take? Just walk them through the process of, okay, this is my first time doing a league. I'm in the Unhappy Hour Sports Show League, whatever, having fun. But I haven't done this. What do you say is going to get them prepared? They go to ESPN. Would you start there?
Yeah, I mean, either Yahoo or ESPN. Just go to the fantasy section. Go to football. There's a lot of different things you can look at. Obviously, the cheat sheets are there. Some really great columns. I really recommend ESPN. Look for Matthew Berry. He's got a lot of different opinions on players. I mean, he'll put it on the wall. He's gonna tell you straight up his opinion on these guys. And then something I started doing this year for the first time is going to YouTube and just literally searching for fantasy football. And there's a lot of really great podcasts on there from guys just kind of going over different strategies and what have you. So I kind of picked up on a couple things there, but certainly a lot of information out there to go on. But I would say starting there is a good point.
Yeah, over on our Blog Talk site, blogtalk.com/The New American Media, Greg Moore has been doing a sports show, Sports and More with Greg Moore. I don't know if you had a chance to check out any of his, I don't know, I think he's on episode 11 or 12 or 13 or something now. But he has Ryan Fowler on from Fox Sports, and they talk, that's what he does, it's fantasy football. And yeah, they've had some good shows. He did his way too early fantasy football mock draft a little bit ago. I know that's floating around out there. And yeah, I mean, there's so many resources, Mike, where people can get information. It's just a matter of, hey, if you want to swim, you got to jump in. You just got to get going and try a few things. Sometimes you have good seasons. Sometimes you get kicked between the legs, and it ain't so fun. I've had my share of both. I mean, didn't you beat me in a championship game because Tony Gonzalez was 4 yards shy in a Monday night game on the last game of the year, and we were .04 points away from clicking over to the next point, something like that?
Yeah, that would be correct. I did take you and Clint out, but it was a very close matchup, and I was definitely stressing out on that one for sure.
Yeah, I know last year it just nothing worked right in the Yahoo League and the ESPN League, whatever, and it's like you gotta, all right, bad season for Johnny Manziel, you just gotta shake it off. Do you think, as the music plays out here, can Johnny Manziel be a quarterback? Have you seen him in the preseason? It looks like his timing is different, his footwork's different, his decision-making is different, his understanding of the offense is different, and after rehab, like, his head is different. Do you think he could ever be a productive quarterback in the NFL?
Well, I think his attitude, first of all, is going to hold him back a lot, but regardless of that, I'm sorry, but I think Josh McCown is washed up. I think they wasted such a high pick on Manziel. As much as I don't like the guy, I think they need to try it out and see how it works. And, if they start off 1-7 or what have you, I don't know. I guess maybe go back to McCown. But I just think that what they wasted and what they're paying him, I think you've almost got to try it for at least a year. And if it just doesn't pan out, I guess try to trade him. But I guess there's always a chance it works out, but my hopes aren't extremely high.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we could trade him to the Dallas Cowboys for a second or third round pick. We know they liked him a lot, but maybe not in the first round. Anyway, it's going to be a fun season, man. We'll have to continue these conversations throughout the year. Go Browns. You're a Packer fan, so go Packers. And it's been great having you on again, Mike. We'll talk with you again soon, okay?
All right, thanks for having me on, Brian.
All right, take care. There goes Mike Murray, everybody. My name's Brian Engelman here at the TNAM Radio Network. I appreciate you. I love you. And peace.